He is among the greatest kings of men to ever live. So revered among the men of the West, it is the height of his greatness to which Aragorn must aspire over 3,000 years later. The leader of the exiles of Númenor, the founder of the northern kingdom of Arnor, and the man who would personally stand against Sauron in combat. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we cover the life and travels of Elendil. Elendil is born in 3119 of the Second Age in Númenor, the only child of Amandil, the Lord of Andunakhori. Despite being among the faithful Númenorians, Amandil was kept on the council of King Ar-Pharazon, who belonged to the rival King's Men faction, who had turned their backs on the Valar and the Elves. For Amandil and Pharazon had once been childhood friends, and Amandil was renowned as a mighty sea captain and held in high honor in Númenor. As for Elendil, his very name signified his family's allegiance to the elves, while in the elven language of Quenya, Elendil means lover of the stars. For men, it meant elf friend. Ar-Pharazon would seize control of Númenor in 3255, when Elendil is 136 years old. By this time, Elendil has two sons, Isildur, who is 46, and Anarion, who is 36. Just 7 years after taking the kingship, Ar-Pharazon brings to Númenor a prisoner from Middle-earth, Sauron. Within that very year, Sauron seduces the king with promises of worlds to rule and ever-growing power, and the hearts of the Númenorians are turned to the worship of Melkor, the world's first Dark Lord. All the king's council, save for Amandil, fell in line, falling for the lies of Sauron. Amandil is dismissed from the council, and he withdraws to Romain, where he secretly begins gathering all of the faithful Númenorians. In 3310, Sauron convinces an aging Ar-Pharazon that the only way to save himself from death is to conquer the lands of the Valar. The Númenorians begin building a massive fleet to make their assault. Amandil, hearing of these evil deeds, resolves to sail west himself, just like his ancestor Eärendil of old, in an effort to seek the aid of the Valar. Before his leaving, he goes to his son, telling Elendil, "Seek out the faithful that are known still to be true, and let them join you in secret, if they are willing to go with you and share in your design." "And what shall that design be?" said Elendil. "To meddle not in the war, and to watch," answered Amandil. "Until I return, I can say no more, but it is most like that you shall fly from the land of the star, with no star to guide you, for that land is defiled. Then you shall lose all that you have loved, foretasting death in life, seeking a land of exile elsewhere. But east or west, the Valar alone can say." Then Amandil said farewell to all his household. "For," said he, "it may well prove that you will see me never again, but hold you ever in readiness, for the end of the world that we have known is now at hand." Amandil takes his small ship and sails west, and what became of him, no tale tells. Elendil follows his father's advice, stationing 9 ships on the eastern coast of Númenor, and upon those ships the faithful put their wives and children, their heirlooms, and great stores of goods. Many things there were of beauty and power, such as the Númenorians had contrived in the days of their wisdom, vessels and jewels, and scrolls of lore written in scarlet and black. And 7 stones they had, the gift of the Eldar, but in the ship of Isildur was guarded the young tree, the scion of Nimloth the Fair. Thus Elendil held himself in readiness, and did not meddle in the evil deeds of those days, and ever he looked for a sign of his father that did not come. In 3319, the great armament is complete. Ar-Pharazon launches his fleet to attack Valinor. Elendil remains in Romain, refusing the summons of the king as he set forth to war. Hearing of this, soldiers of Sauron are sent to capture Elendil and drag him to the fires of the Temple of Melkor. However, Elendil evades the soldiers, taking the ships offshore and for the time, waiting. As Pharazon reaches Valinor and declares it for his own, Eru Ilúvatar intervenes. Pharazon and his soldiers are buried under the earth, and a great devouring wave rolls over Númenor, and the island realm is taken by the sea. In the process, Sauron's physical form is destroyed. And whether or no it were that Amandil had indeed come to Valinor, and Manwë hearkened to his prayer, Elendil and his sons and their people are spared from the ruin of that day. For when the great wave took the island realm, a great wind, wilder than any wind man had ever known, roared from the west and swept the ships of the faithful far away. So strong it was that their sails were rent and their masts snapped. Scattered by the storm, the ships of Elendil, Isildur, and Anarion finally come to the shores of Middle-earth. Isildur and Anarion's 5 ships are taken south, where they would found the realm of Gondor. Elendil's 4 ships are taken north, where he founds the realm of Arnor. Upon landing on the shores of Middle-earth, Elendil, exiled from the fallen Númenor, proclaims, Et earelo, endorena utulien, sinome maruvan, arhildinyarten, ambar meta. Out of the great sea to Middle-earth I am come. In this place will I abide, and my heirs, unto the ending of the world. In his northern realm, Elendil constructs the capital city of Annuminas. Throughout both Arnor and Gondor, great towers are constructed, which house the 7 Palantiri saved from the downfall of Numenor. In the south, seeing stones are placed in Minas Ithil, where Isildur also planted the seedling of Nimloth, Osgiliath, Minas Anor, and Orthanc. In Elendil's realm, he places stones in Annuminas, the watchtower of Amansul, and the tower of Elostirion in the Emin Bered. The White Towers of Emin Bered are built by Gil-galad for his friend Elendil, and both tower and stone were maintained and guarded by the elf lord Círdan the Shipwright. And while the other 6 stones were used to communicate with one another and see across their realms, it is said that Elendil used the Elostirion stone to look back along the straight road across the sea to Eressëa in the Undying Lands, where the Master Stone still dwelt. And though he tried, Elendil could not see the fallen Númenor with the Palantir that would come to be known as the Elendil Stone. Thus the peoples of Gondor and Arnor would thrive and build their new realms in peace for over 100 years, Isildur and Anarion serving as kings of Gondor, while Elendil is the High King over both great realms of men. Presumably, it is during these years that Elendil writes the account of the downfall of Numenor, or what we know as the text of the Akallabêth in the Silmarillion. It is also through Elendil's efforts that the tale of Aldarion and Arendis is preserved, though he did not write the original account himself. However, this time of peaceful growth would come to an end with the return of an old foe. For Sauron would return, his spirit coming back to Middle-earth. No longer capable of taking fair form, he instead turns from methods of deception to methods of fear and force. In 3429, Sauron attacks Minas Ithil, seizing the city and causing Isildur to flee with his family and a seedling of the White Tree of Gondor. As Anarion is left in charge of Gondor, holding out against Sauron, Isildur flees north, sailing to the shores of Arnor. Coming to his father, he tells Elendil the news of Sauron's attack. In response, Elendil turns to his elven friend. Now Elendil and Gil-galad took counsel together, for they perceived that Sauron would grow too strong and would overcome all his enemies one by one if they did not unite against him. Therefore, they made that league which is called the Last Alliance, and they marched east into Middle-earth, gathering a great host of elves and men, and they halted for a while at Imladris. It is said that the host that was there assembled was fairer and more splendid in arms than any that has since been in Middle-earth, and none greater has been mustered since the host of the Valar went against Orodruin. Gil-galad meets Elendil at Aman-Sul, and there in 3430 they form the last alliance of elves and men. Elendil binds the alliance with a great oath, invoking the name of Eru as witness. Their combined force marches to Imladris, where they spend the next 3 years forging weapons and making battle plans for their war upon Sauron. Finally, in 3434, they cross the Misty Mountains, turning south to Mordor. Sauron burns the lands of the Entwives in an effort to slow their march. But the Alliance, now joined by elves from Greenwood and Lorien, as well as dwarves of Khazad-dûm, marches on, finally coming to the Black Gate of Mordor. Elendil is joined there by Anarion's forces from the south, and despite heavy losses on both sides, the Alliance is victorious and continues on to the very Tower of Barad-dûr. Elendil and Gil-galad's armies make camp upon the plains of Gorgoroth, and for the next 7 years, they lay siege to the Dark Tower. In the 6th year of the siege, Elendil's youngest son Anarion is killed by a rock thrown from the tower. Finally, in 3441, Sauron issues forth with a small host of his followers, driving the Alliance back to the very slopes of Mount Doom. There, the two great kings, Elendil and Gil-galad, would fight the Dark Lord face to face in single combat. But at last the siege was so strait that Sauron himself came forth, and he wrestled with Gil-galad and Elendil, and they both were slain, and the sword of Elendil broke under him as he fell. But Sauron also was thrown down. Elendil and Gil-galad give their lives to defeat Sauron. Elendil is killed by a strike from the Dark Lord, and Gil-galad's face is scorched by the heat of Sauron's hand. In that moment, as Sauron is also thrown down, Isildur takes the broken hilt shard of his father's blade and cuts the ruling ring from Sauron's hand. Sauron abandons his broken body, his spirit fleeing, and Isildur claims the One Ring as weregild for his fallen father and brother. Isildur buries his father's remains on the top of a hill between the Gondorian realms of Calinarthon and Anorion. Isildur would order that the location be kept secret, and only the kings and later ruling stewards would ever venture there when in need of wisdom or in days of danger or distress. The rulers would also take their full-grown heirs to the tomb of Elendil, where they would tell them of the making of the tomb and matters of which they should know. In time, this memorial mound would come to be covered in white flowers of Alfirin, known to men as the symbol Muna. Over 2,500 years after Elendil's death, the ruling steward Cirion of Gondor would bring Eorl the Young to the summit of Aman Anwar. There they would pledge an oath, and like Elendil before him, Cirion calls Eru himself as witness to their pledge, forming Eorl's new kingdom of Rohan, and swearing the kingdoms to aid one another in all days to come. Now that Gondor was no longer the same realm as in the days of Isildur, Cirion removes the tomb of Elendil and places the casket in the Hallows of Rath-Dinin, the resting place of the kings and rulers of Gondor. We also know there would be at least one statue of Elendil, which stood in the halls of Minas Tirith. While his body would lie in Minas Tirith, Elendil's legacy would reach far beyond its walls. His name would be held in special reverence, and none among the Dúnedain would ever be named Elendil after him. But he would also live on in the memory of his enemy, for Sauron hated and feared the line of Elendil, and his sword that had maimed him. Both would come to haunt him in the War of the Ring, with the rise of Aragorn, Elendil's great-grandson by 39 generations, who would both wield the reforged Andúril and use his ancestor's name as a battle cry. And when the Dark Lord meets his uttermost defeat, Aragorn is crowned High King of the reunited kingdoms, just as his famous ancestor. During his coronation, Aragorn Elessar spoke the words of Elendil. Out of the great sea to Middle-earth I am come. In this place I will abide, and my heirs, unto the ending of the world. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters who make this channel possible. Tom DeBombadil 19, Listen Me the Cinda, Celebrimbor, The Mighty Mim, Team Weasel, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, Toby Mob's Music, Sky Carcass, Slide Belts, Dane Ragnarsson, Salim Rahman, Zetrock, Berto Berg, Grand Strategy Nerd, Graham Darricott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Michael Wu, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description and purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching and subscribing, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.